Joining our Meetup, Loudoun Agile Meetup. So we are very excited to bring our speaker, Betsy Stockdale. Thank you so much, Betsy. And guess what? Betsy works in NASA. So this is the first time we have someone coming from NASA. So we are very excited. And more than that, the excitement is, the topic is also very new for us, right? AI, right? We've been thinking to learn so much about what is AI and how does it works in an agile world. So here we go, right? AI in frontier and how it helps with product owners, right? So this is all we're going to learn today. But before that, I want to give a little bit of background about Betsy. She's a strategic product manager at NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, and she is about 30 years of experience in project requirements, elicitation, and analysis. She brings more than, again, 30 years of experience. She also worked in like Aragon Digital, Walt Disney Company, and Dell, which brings real-time experience, right? So her approach is rooted in real world, and she brings high-level insights and so much of energy to work. So we're going to talk, Betsy is going to show us about the ChatGPT and how we're going to use everything about AI and how it's going to be useful for product owners. So without any further delay, we'll let Jessie take over.
All right.
Betsy take over, I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much. Yes, I am Betsy. I currently work for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is based out in California. In case you have heard in the news, yes, we had a bunch of layoffs yesterday. No federal budget is causing us challenges, but I survived those layoffs. Yay, I guess. A little bit of survivor's guilt going on at the moment, but that's okay. I'm excited to be here, and I'm really excited to talk about AI, and especially as a product owner, what does that mean for us? So, I know that many of you may be thinking about, AI and gosh, it's, we keep hearing an awful lot about it. And, is this really going to change the way that we work and that we, how we really interact with the world? Well, artificial intelligence, or AI, is really essentially the development of computer systems that are mimicking human intelligence. It's about creating machines that can learn, that can reason, that can perform tasks that typically require human-like cognitive abilities. So in simpler terms, right, that was kind of all fancy talk, but in simpler terms, AI is really the force behind the scenes, powering technologies that can range from virtual assistants to image recognition to complex decision-making systems. So it's not really just a buzzword anymore. It's really becoming a transformative force driving the speed of change in our digital landscape. So as we delve into this presentation today, we're going to explore some of the advancements that AI has made, the tools and the applications that can leverage its power, and the considerations that come with embracing this, right? I would be remiss not to sit there and say, hey, we have to be careful about a few things. So let's buckle up and let's start to demystify what AI is all about. So first off, AI and how quickly it is changing. I mean, this field is notoriously very fast-paced, and it actually makes it really hard to track every development, let alone summarize the changes within a specific time frame. But let me tell you, just about the last 3 months, right, since I started developing this presentation, we've had all of these different things, right? Google has announced Gemini, PMI's Infinity project. And so PMI, or the Project Management Institute, has their own AI component now. We've got the Bard image generator that has recently been announced. And even today, this last bullet point I added on today, as I was logging on to Bard, because I'm going to do a demo later on today, Bard is now Gemini. Right. And so it's changing so very fast and so very quickly. But there's been a lot of breakthroughs out there as well, just not even from a tool perspective, but just even thinking about what some of these different technology advancements are. For example, we've got generative AI for creative applications. So for example, text to image models like DALL-E 3 and Imagen have further enhanced their capabilities, creating photorealistic images from complex descriptions. We've got AI for climate change. So applications that are forecasting extreme weather events, optimizing renewable energy production, and even developing sustainable materials that are seeing increasing research and development. I mean, there's lots of incredible things out there that are happening. So I think the key trends that we're seeing out there is like the focus on explainability and interpretability. You do see a growing concern about maybe the bias or the lack of transparency in AI models. And so that's part of the reason why we have to be careful about how we use this information. We need to make sure that we've got responsible AI development, and you're seeing a lot of discussion about that in the world today, and making sure that the frameworks around ethical AI development and deployment are really being considered. We also have the democratization of AI tools. In other words, these are becoming more user-friendly, much more easier to use, and it's making it easier for individuals like us, maybe even smaller businesses, to be able to leverage the power of AI without really needing a whole lot of extensive technical expertise. And we also are seeing a shift towards hybrid and federated learning, right? And so in other words, the training of these AI models on the data that it is being fed is distributed across multiple devices or locations, which is really helping provide much better input and output that we get out there. All right. So what's coming in the future? Well, if you ask AI, you get a lot of personalization out there. So models that are tailored to individual preferences or needs. You see this in a lot, especially with maybe specific industry groups. PMI's Infinity Project is a great example like that. The company I left before going to JPL was actually taking a model of AI and personalizing it for their intellectual content. We're also seeing multimodal AI. So in other words, systems that can seamlessly process and understand different types of data. So instead of just giving it text, it's being able to do things like give it text and images and audio, basically leading to more richer and nuanced interactions. We're also starting to see AI for robotics and automation. So continued advancements will further blur the lines between humans and machines. I know that kind of may sound scary, but it's going to be where robots are capable for performing more complex tasks and really collaborating with humans instead of just taking directions from us. So let's step back for a moment, and that all sounds great, but what about us, right? What about product owners? And how is it that we can use AI? Well, I see three main areas, at least for myself, in terms of how I can use AI to help me. First off, creativity, right? I used AI and helped me to develop this presentation. From the beginning of drafting the title and the abstract to even drafting the slides, right? After all, I'm really not this creative, but AI helped in things like that. Productivity. I mean, how many of you may use Teams at work? And the fact that Teams has this transcript feature, well, that's a version of AI, right? Where it's going through and it's doing that recording for me and transcribing all of that verbiage and text for us. We could even take that information and feed it into an AI tool to come up with meeting minutes, right? There's things like that can help with. And then there's things that with analysis, right? Where I can feed it information and data and have it start to interpret that data for me as well. So there's lots of different uses that we can have for AI. Okay, well, there we go. Oops, sorry. All right. So first off, let's talk a little bit about some of the tools out there. I am going to be doing some demos in a little bit here about what some of these tools, but I do want to tell you that the demos that I'm going to use are for the basic versions of the tools, things that don't cost us any money. If you want to get more advanced, there's a lot of different plugins for these tools that you can also use that will cost you additional money. So there's things like that to consider, but there's still a lot of things that you can do just with the generally available tools. We're going to take a look at, well, it was Bard. And so this slide as of today is now out of date. Sorry about that. But Bard is now Gemini and Gemini is now Bard. But we're going to take a look at that. We're going to take a look at ChatGPT and just, what you can do just generally available with those tools. But all you have to do is sign up for it. All right, so I wanted to take a moment and maybe you can drop this either into chat or you can maybe just unmute yourself. But what experiences have you all had with AI? What have you used? What has worked for you so far?
To augment and modify some of my phrasing in my resume. I've used it for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I did, last year I went through a job transition. And one of the things I had learned in researching and preparing for my new job search was that my LinkedIn profile should be much more conversational. It should not be as formal as my resume. And so one of the things that I did was I actually fed my resume into ChatGPT and said, make these bits more conversational. And I used that as a basis for the changes I needed to make on my LinkedIn profile. Now, it doesn't mean that I just copy and pasted, but it was a great draft for me. It was a great start. That's a great one. What else? What else have people done and used with AI to date?
I'm using ChatGPT quite a bit, but I'm struggling with image creation and also like sometimes when they are talking about like this PPT where you said that you've created this PPT with the with that design that you've just had like in the previous slide, which is something I'm not getting even close to, because it's giving me more like a picture rather than like the kind of structure like how it would be in a a classroom setting, or what you call it, like in an agile way of looking at it.
Yes. Well, and I will tell you what I used for this presentation, and almost every slide here has been touched with it, but I used the design feature that comes with PowerPoint. I went through and it basically would take the additional, the basic information and give me lots of design options. And that's where almost, not all, but almost every one of these slide designs came from. And that's a form of AI, right? I didn't think of it, right? It's, yeah. But there are other tools out there that you can use to actually generate your presentations for you and actually create those as well. Right? What else?
I've also used Canva for the PPTs, but then again, in that, it's hard to get those templates to make it look perfect with, for project management specific.
Yeah.
Because there's very limited templates in there.
Yep. And it's still a new field. So yes, yeah. But it may give you ideas that you can then take in advance.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. What else? What else have other people used and done?
I must say I did try, in the early days, people talked about itineraries and I did try that. It didn't quite work for me. Now, it could be I was already familiar with that part of the world and I kind of knew maybe more than what early versions of ChatGPT knew. But yeah, I was pretty disappointed. I was like, what? No.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Thank you, because that's a great segue into the next topic. So the next topic is, how do you get those results, right? How is it that you get the results that you're looking for? And it's got a term now. It's called prompt engineering. And you're going to start seeing an awful lot in the news media and social media, LinkedIn, et cetera, about prompt engineering. So what is prompt engineering? Well, imagine you're trying to explain something to a child. You wouldn't necessarily use that same language you would for an adult, right? You'd simplify, clarify, and maybe even add a fun anecdote or something like that just to grab their attention. Essentially, that's what prompt engineering is all about. It's the art of crafting the perfect set of instructions for generative AIs to use. All right. So you think of these prompts as the bridge between what you want and what AI can understand. The more precise and tailored your prompt, the better that AI can interpret your intentions and generate that desired output. This could be anything from writing a poem to summarizing a complex scientific paper to maybe drawing a specific scene. So there's several reasons why this field is really starting to boom, right? First, it's really unlocking the potential of AI. While AI models are powerful, they're still limited by their understanding of our language. So prompt engineering helps us tap into their potential by giving them clear and concise instructions. The democratization of AI, that complex coding skills aren't needed are really benefiting from this, right? So with careful prompt engineering, anyone can utilize these powerful models, really opening the doors for that creativity, that research, and that problem solving in various fields. It can help us for fine-tuning specific tasks, right? So these prompts can be tailored to specific contexts and goals, and this allows for precise control over the AI's outputs, making it really ideal for tasks like writing marketing copy, or maybe generating realistic dialogues for our chatbots, or perhaps summarizing large data sets. So one of the things that you can look out there for, and I'm happy to send some of this along, but I pulled these off of LinkedIn. Got really, really big on me. But so here is you're starting to see some of this where you're getting you're getting like prompt engineering cheat sheets out there, right? And so there we go. You're starting to see things like this, where you can get these prompt engineering cheat sheets that help you think about things to consider. So for example, like the prompt format here in the middle, right? You've got your persona, maybe a verb, format and length. How long do you want it to be? What's your objective? How that output should be relevant? What tone of voice do you want? That sort of thing, right? What your audience is. So things like that are also very helpful. So, and this kind of gives you a lot of different examples here and that. So look for these sorts of cheat sheets. I'm also happy to send this along if anybody wants a copy of this. There's a couple of other ones out there that actually also provide a lot of great information, especially for prompt engineering. All right. So the next thing that we do need to make sure that we consider is the concern about privacy and ethics, right? With its rapid advancement, while it's exciting, can bring a growing list of privacy concerns. So, like as product owners, we have to make sure that these concerns can be very critical for our products. So like, here are some concerns that you might want to consider, right? The quantity and sensitivity of your information. If you're going to be using a tool like ChatGPT or Bard or Gemini, as they're calling it now, in the public domain, you are feeding that information into the public domain, right? I've heard about a story, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard about a story where a person pretty high up in his organization used ChatGPT to help him come up with a strategy for the next fiscal year. And he put that all into, the publicly available ChatGPT, and it spit out lots of great information, but it also made all that information available to his competitors, right? So you have to be careful about things like that. So, think about how that data is going to be used and collected and stored, right? You need to make sure that it's very, very clear. You might also have to make sure that you're being careful about things like if you're using facial recognition or medical records, right? Again, these are all information that you'd be putting out there into the public domain. You need to be careful about biases or discrimination. So these algorithms learn from the data that they're trained on. And if the data is biased, well, then the resulting, results that you get will also have that same sort of bias as well. We need to make sure that we are being very clear about where this information is coming from. So all these different things that you have to be careful about as well. So from an ethics sort of perspective, right, fairness and non-discrimination, again, we've got the biases there, transparency, right, making sure that people know where this information has come from. You also need to make sure that and think through like who's responsible for AI decisions. If the tool makes a mistake, well, who's responsible for that mistake? The tool is a tool. So you just need to make sure that you're thinking through all of that as well. All right, so let's start getting into some of the good stuff. How can we as a product owner use AI? All right, so I see it as a super powered assistant, right? An assistant is something that I can use to help me with my job. Now, with some of this, right, we can do things like data analysis and maybe pattern recognition. So you can maybe use some of the analysis tools to help analyze large data sets and maybe identify those patterns, trends, maybe outliers. This can really help with making data-driven decisions. Just maybe even report generation. So maybe taking information from various sources and having it spit out a report for you. Even something as simple as taking perhaps the transcript that you get out of Teams from a meeting and coming up with meeting minutes, and even going through and having it pull out what the action items from that meeting were. Things like natural language processing for requirements, right? You can use these tools to help you understand large sets of unstructured data, such as maybe user feedback or documentation that you get from them, and help with understanding what sort of information, have it summarize it for you. Maybe even predictive analytics for forecasting. So using some of that to help predict future trends that are coming. Perhaps even process automation. Now, some of the basic tools that I'm going to be playing with here in a few moments, they're not going to have that graphical capability, but what they can do is they can take the information and they can draw out maybe the steps for a process flow. And then that gives you at least that first initial information that you can put into a process flow and then take it from there. Maybe sentiment analysis for stakeholder feedback. Right, so it can maybe take these different communication channels that we have and provide insights into how stakeholders are perceiving information based upon the sort of information that you get. You could also have it help you maybe with risk assessments, right? Where are the risky parts of my particular project? Maybe it can even help with maybe skill enhancement. So for example, maybe taking training opportunities, it can help us identify areas that maybe we are needing help in. All right, it's time for a demo. All right, so what I want to do now is we're going to look at a couple of different tools. So first off, we've got ChatGPT, we've got Project Infinity up here, and then I also have Bard as well. So this is PMI's tool here. What I found with PMI's tool, what they've trained it on is they've trained it on the PMBOK, right, or the Project Management Body of Knowledge. So if you really want to maybe get a better understanding of, so for example here, help me understand earned value management, right? Or something like that. You know, it can give us additional information to maybe help you learn and really understanding that sort of thing. So you can see here, right, I've typed in basically a basic question, help me understand. And so from PMI's tool, that's pretty much what I have found the value in here, is that if I want to find more information about something within the PMI realm, that can help us with that. But it's not necessarily good for, say, hey, I want to go and, you know, create a project plan or something like that. I haven't found that very useful. So let's take ChatGPT. And what I've got here is I've got a little basic scenario, something completely made up, right? It's a fingerprinting little system here for ATMs. So instead of having to put in a card or, you know, putting in your code, it would use your finger, right, to help understand that. So let's take this and let's go back to ChatGPT and let's say, help me create a basic process flow for this scenario. And then I'm going to essentially put into it what the scenario is. So here it's giving me a basic set of information that I can use to start to create a process flow, right? I can take this information and then go maybe to whatever diagramming tool that you use. I've got a love-hate relationship with all of them, by the way, but whether it's Visio or Miro or Mural or Chat or many of the others, you can use this to go ahead and start creating that for you. So this will give you an example of what you can do here. And so I could even then refine this even a little bit more and say something along the lines of, maybe I want to know, well, what would my swim lanes be? What swim lanes would I need for the above process steps? All right. And then what ChatGPT will come back and it will give me some more of this, right? So it's going to have our end user and it's going to give us essentially our fingerprint authentication system and then maybe our ATM system, right? So there we go. And it's even telling me, here's the steps that would be in each swim lane, right? So again, it's taking that information. Now, is this going to be perfect? No, right? It's not going to be perfect. But what it would do is it would give me at least a starting point that I can take that information and then, right, tweak it, adjust it, say, no, that's not really what I'm looking for, or moving on from there.
What was the prompt you used? Sorry.
So the initial prompt that I used was help me, this one right here. And then I pasted in the scenario from my Word document.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep. So let's say that I'm good here. now what I use, and this is what I tend to use it a lot for, is helping me draft my user stories and my acceptance criteria. So let's start with user stories first. What would some user stories be for the above, let's say, process steps for the user? So now it's giving me a bunch of different basic user stories that I got for each of the different process steps. But you know what? It's given it to me in the basic user story format. I actually like to write my user stories more in a job story format or jobs to be done story format. So I'm going to ask it to take these and transform them into that jobs to be done format. So now it's rewriting them for me in this jobs to be done format. So again, these are probably not perfect, but at the same time, I've got a draft to start with. And to me, that can be a great place to get started. All right. How about, let's take this one. We're going to take one story here. And now let's get some acceptance criteria. What would be some acceptance criteria for this user story? So now it's giving me a whole list of acceptance criteria for that particular user story. But you know what? I like to write my user stories in a gherkin format or behavior-driven design. So let's ask them to rewrite these in that sort of format. And we rewrite these user, and so now it's doing this as well, right? It's going through and it's rewriting all of these in a gherkin format as well. All right. So it's actually even giving me two different ones. It's giving me two different examples here on how we could rewrite it. So here's one way it could be done, which I probably wouldn't prefer this one because it is so big, right? If you're looking at this, and it's also giving me the ability to copy this code. So if you are using a tool like Cucumber to actually do some automated testing, you could copy this and put it into your Gherkin or into your Cucumber application. But we're going to say we prefer this one more because it's actually giving us a little bit more information here. What are y'all thoughts? Is this something that you think might be helpful for you?
That's amazing.
It's pretty cool. Like, I keep teaching about gherkins, how important it is to write acceptance criteria using the gherkins format. It's the reason why we do this, right? Because when developers are given this format, right, they don't have any assumptions. So
Yes.
yeah, if we don't write it in this format, they add their own assumptions into the code, and that comes as an error or bug later on, right?
Yes.
So and it's so helpful for automation testing, with TDDs and all that, BDDs,
Yes.
sorry, right? Yeah, it's very helpful. I see some folks asking here for the Gherkin format, would you have to validate per each user story, correct? Yes.
I would. In
Yeah.
fact, and let's go ahead and try it, right? So we've decided we like this one. I think, and based upon my own experience, that this is too big, right? That this is for one user story, that's a lot. So I'm going to ask it to break this up.
Yep. But this provides a great starting point, right?
Yes.
Think about it if we have to write from the beginning, how time-saving effort this is. This is amazing.
Yep.
And more so ever, we can, bringing things that we otherwise don't think about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So new scenarios might be very helpful, but we didn't think about it. So those are a good one. I think
Yes.
Anastasia is asking, oh no, wait, who's asking? Ravinder is asking, can you try business plan or marketing plan
Sure.
on this?
For our scenario, a short so here we go. And it keeps going. But this would be, right? I mean, again, it's a draft. It's a baseline. You probably want a lot more information in here, but it's something that you can start with.
Definitely, this is really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. What else? What else do you guys want to see it do? What else do you want me to ask it?
Can you try some frameworks like, project management frameworks or
Sure.
agile frameworks?
So I'm going to ask it to give me a project plan. So it's giving me a basic project plan here. But you know what? It seems to be missing something here. So I don't see a requirements phase in the above plan. So it's not adding in a requirements section. So now it's adding a requirements phase for us. Which, how dare it forget requirements? Come on.
Doesn't even have the risk or the constraints section.
Right. So asking it to come up with some risks. Right. Again, it's a baseline. It usually gives me things I hadn't thought about. Because I find personally that I tend to get stuck in, oh, well, what if everybody's not available for me to meet with them? Right? Sort of things. Here it's giving me, gosh, you got to worry about data privacy regulations. What? Okay. Right? Regulatory approval. Oh, wow. There's something I hadn't thought about. Right? So it's giving me a lot of additional insights and things to think about as well. Now let's talk about constraints. So here we have some basic constraints as well. What else? What else would y'all like to see?
You mentioned something about swim lines in one of the presentations before. Can you can you try like some sort of like a mind mapping diagram type of structure?
So I don't think it's going to give us back anything because my experience with ChatGPT in the basic version, right? This is the non-paid version. It doesn't do any graphics, but let's see what it comes up with. Of the oh, there, it's actually getting better. So it's not great, but it might give you a place to start.
This is really amazing. Thank you so much. What an eye-opener session. Amazing.
Yeah.
Love it.
What else?
Have we seen any user acceptance criteria generated for ERP implementation like SAP?
I personally haven't, but I also haven't worked on a project like that. But it may be something that could be done. You just have to give it the right information.
I have tried it with SAP and PeopleSoft, so it's very generic information. So you have to be very accurate with exactly what you want, and it will definitely give you back some, like dependent on your conversations that you're going to have with your client.
Sure, that was expected.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, you know, it's again, this is just a, you know, a made up scenario that I created right here. And so, you know, the information that we're getting back is very high level. I would definitely want to dig into a lot more of this, but, you know, as a place to start, it's helpful. You know, we were talking before our meeting started about, you know, how much am I using this on a daily basis? And I find personally that it kind of depends upon what phase of the project I'm in. So the project I'm currently working on at JPL, we are reimagining the way that we use an Oracle manufacturing application for how we can streamline the essentially manufacturing process of a spacecraft, right? Because that's what JPL does, is they actually will envision, design, and then essentially build a spacecraft that will go somewhere. And right now we're doing a lot of discovery. And so what we're doing is we're talking to all of the various individual groups that have a part of the overall manufacturing process. So those that are coming up and doing the actual fabrication of the mechanical parts, or the fabrication of the electrical parts, or right now we're talking to the QA groups, and there's a whole bunch of different QA groups. There's, you know, the QA group that when something shows up on lab because they bought something, they inspect it before it gets sent off to wherever it needs to go. There's the people that'll inspect the mechanical fabrication or the electrical fabrication, or when they start to put it all together, right? All of that. And so we're in the process of really understanding how they do things today. And since we're at that phase of our project, we're even saying we're almost pre-initiation, right? We're kind of right at the very beginning there. I'm not using it that much. However, once we start getting into the point where we're going to start to really dig in and really get a good understanding of, all right, this is how things are done today. How is it going to change in the future? And then what requirements do I have for our IT groups and the changes that they're going to need to make? That's where I expect to start really using this, because that's when I'm going to be able to sit there and say, hey, you know, help me with my user stories, draft them out for me, draft out my acceptance criteria, let me take a look at it, tweak it, right, etc.
Those are some of the things that I am trying to do myself too, and I'm struggling with that right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that, you know, as I said, it's a great start. Can I copy and paste it and say, whoof, I'm done? No, not at all. I really have to go through and say, gosh, you know, this is a good beginning, but I have to tweak it from there. I have to go and provide more information, edit it, sit there and say, you know what, I don't need these bits, or this part up here has to be expanded. But I find that a lot of times it will think of things that I hadn't thought of, and then also spur that creativity to say, oh, you know, you reminded me, we also need A, B, C, D, E sort of thing.
You know, that's the other reason probably why it's called Copilot.
Yes. Yes. That's why I think of it as an assistant, right? It's my assistant to help me. Can it do my job? No. Right? It can't do my job. I don't think it'll ever be able to do my job, because one of the things it can't do is read the room. It can't go through and understand, at least at this time, and I'm hoping never in my career, it's not going to be able to sit there and understand when a stakeholder is mad, frustrated, not telling me something, right? Picking up on those sorts of things, because that's one of the things we're looking for. We're looking for shadow systems, right? And it's asking the right questions about that. This is good for telling me or giving me information when I feed it information. It's not reading between the lines at this point. And that's what us humans are good at.
I'm seeing a question from Ness. Could you ask it to list the blockchain capabilities that would be required?
Sure. Let's see what it comes up with. Here we go. So again, it's a great place to start.
So everyone is seeing from their work perspective. I see a question from Pauline. Can I generate test scripts?
So you could have it do some code. Let's see. Can you write some code? Let's say Python, if I can spell it. Let's do the last. Again, it's probably a start. It's not perfect, but there you go. And again, you've got the copy bit up here, so you could copy and paste that into whatever application that you want to use.
That's pretty awesome.
What else? What other questions do you want me to ask it?
Generate test scripts.
There you go.
So Betsy, it's great to see. I mean, ChatGPT doing work for us, but it does have an impact, or it might have an impact in future about in our job domains.
Yeah, I think it'll help speed things up. I really don't think it's going to replace anybody.
But the
I think
number
it
of,
should make
number of
us more
people needed,
productive.
number of people needed.
Yeah. All right, so how about a test script for like a human tester? There we go. So now we've got a test script for that as well. And it's thinking through, right? Authentication. What if you have an invalid log out? Switching between systems. Here's some edge cases, error handling, stability, right? So it's thinking about some of that as well.
So Betsy, this is Toby. I was about to publish next month's event, and I was feeling a little lazy to look through the content and come up with all the hashtags. So I copy pasted the abstract into ChatGPT, inspired by you, and said,
Yep.
give me all the hashtags. And it gave me 16 hashtags. I probably would have thought of 5.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm using what you're teaching immediately. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's a great thing to say, what are the key takeaways, right? Since we're almost at the top of the hour, experiment, play, right? Go in, just be curious, type different things and see what you come up with. Right? There's lots of different things that you can come out there. And, to do what we just did in this last, 25 minutes or so, that's how we learn, is to really just go in and experiment and play. So here are some resources, right? If you're not familiar with this, there's a great LinkedIn course out there as well. This is the link to that LinkedIn course about the introduction to prompt engineering. Which that's what's really going to help us. DALL-E is out there. That's also for image generation. Bard/Gemini has just come out with their own image generation that you can also play with as well. I've played a little bit with that one. I have found with DALL-E that they want money for the image stuff. But I have found with Bard, it's not asking for money yet. So that might be a place to start. But yeah, there's lots of, these are just the beginning of those resources, and definitely something that you can, at least start with.
Can we have
that's me.
those links in the chat? Someone is asking if possible. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, here, let me go over. Oops, sorry. There we go. Actually, let me get out of this and do it this way.
And while we get those links, we want to make sure to thank Betsy for such an enlightening day today, and overcoming any fears, overcoming any rejection, and making this more of a partnership. So thank you so much, Betsy. Truly appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my pleasure. That's me, right? Definitely feel free to reach out. LinkedIn, definitely had to put perseverance out there. That's one of the many rovers that is out there on Mars, sending back great information. So go JPL.
Thank you. And I'd like to remind people that in March, we have another interesting event coming up. The topic is reframing disruption, developing the capability for change. That's partly what we did here. So that's a great segue, right? It goes into the next step. It's going to be presented by Kumar Dattatreyan, who's an executive business and agile coach. So excited to see everyone there. And thank you so much for spending your evening with us today. We'll see you again soon.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Lots of
everyone.